Now, the next question arises, who protects these plant varieties? Who protects these farmer varieties in India? Now, in India, we already know that India is a member of World Trade Organization. It has also signed trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. Now, Article 27.3 of TRIPS requires all its member states. India is also a member state, so it requires all its member states to protect varieties either by a patent or by a sui generis system or by a combination of both. So India adopted for a sui generis system. It means it adopted for a new system for the protection of plant varieties. The Plant Variety Protection and Farmers Act 2001 is the act which governs the protection of plant varieties in India. It is an attempt by Indian government to recognize and protect the rights of both commercial plant breeders as well as farmers. Now, this has made a considerable improvement in conserving, improving, and making plant genetic resources available to farmers. Now, this intellectual property right granted under PPV and FR Act is basically a dual right. You get two rights. It's a dual right. Dual right. You get one right over the variety and another right over the denomination or the name assigned to that variety by the breeder. So it's a dual right. Now, there are certain objectives of PPV and FR Act. We'll study about those. The first objective is to establish an effective system for the protection of plant varieties. The Act was put forward so that plant varieties and rights of farmers, along with breeders' right, could be protected for the development of new plant varieties, for encouraging the development of new plant varieties. Now, to second objective is to recognize and protect the rights of farmers in respect to their contribution. See, farmers make a lot of efforts in their field. A lot of breeding work, a lot of crossing work is being done in field so that a new variety could become up. So farmers are making an effort. So these rights, basically their contribution is to be acknowledged. So one of the So, one of the objectives of this act was to recognize and protect the rights of farmers. The third objective is to accelerate agricultural development in the country. See, when a person is rewarded for their intellectual effort, the person is rewarded for their hard work, they obviously get encouraged, they obviously accelerate the development. Now, protection of plants, breeders' right, and stimulate investment for research and development was another objective of this act. Now, this act also facilitates the growth of seed industry in the country as the farmers get protected, as the rights of farmers, as the rights of breeders and researchers get protected. They ensure that there is high availability of quality seed for other people as well. So, the PPV and FR Act 2004 is categorized further into three types of right, like farmers' right, breeders' right, and researchers' right. The objective of this act was to set up a compelling framework for the insurance of plants and to privilege farmers and their reproducers. So, this act is further categorized as farmers' right, breeders' right, and researchers' right. We'll be learning more about this in the few lessons. Now, what are farmers' rights? Farmers' rights are basically the rights which are granted to farmer over the production or over the development of new plant variety or a plant variety which didn't existed in the past. Now, farmers' rights are of various types. It is categorized into other six forms like farmers' right on seeds. Now, farmer who has developed a new variety shall be entitled to save, use, sow, and exchange their farm produce, including seed of protected variety. They are free to sell it, they are free to save it, they are free to use it, they are even free to exchange it for other items, they are even free to share it with other farmers. Now, second right is right to register for traditional varieties. The Indian PPVFR Act allows a farmer to register, to go and register their variety by their own. This third right is farmers' right for reward and the third right is farmers' right for reward and recognition. Now, the farmer's right consists of a right of a farmer to save, use, exchange, and sell farm saved seeds and propagating material. Now, for their right, they are recognized, they are rewarded, and they are also supported by the government to enhance the productivity. Now, the fourth right is farmer's right for protection against infringement. Now, what does this mean? If a farmer somehow proves before court that he or she was not aware that he or she is using a protected variety for the production, they are given a protection against infringement. They will not be charged by the government for un- they will not be charged by the government for unlawful infringement of other person's property. Now, the next one is right to compensation. When a farmer or a breeder produces a new variety, when a farmer or breeder has seeds of a new variety, they can sell it. They can sell their registered seed with full disclosure of their agronomic performance. And let's say a farmer had brought seeds from a company or from a breeder, and that seed is unable to perform better in field or is unable to perform at the expected level, then that farmer or then that breeder may claim compensation from the party from which they have bought the seeds. That is farmers right to compensation. Now the third one is last one is farmers right for receiving free services. Now farmers are exempted from any fee or any proceeding before the registrar or the authority. So there are six rights which a farmer has under farmers right of PPV and FRA. Next comes breeders' right. Now, breeders' right are somewhat similar to farmers' right. An exclusive right is provided to a breeder or his successor or the agent to produce, sell, distribute, and import or even export the new variety. The breeder may authorize any other person to sell and market and otherwise deal with the variety registered under this act. The next right is researchers' right. Now, what is researchers' right? Now, any researcher or any research scholar can use any of the registered variety under the Act for conducting research and experiment. The clause is that this would include the use of variety as an initial source of variety for the purpose of developing any other variety, not for selling, not for reproducing, not for exporting, and not for importing. A researcher can only use the registered variety under the Act for conducting experiments, and he or she must have authorization of the breeder of a registered variety if a repeated use is being done. Hello everyone, I am Bhavna Singh, working with Verispire Private Technologies Limited as a senior research associate, and I'll be taking this session on plant variety protection. So let's start. Now we all know what are intellectual properties. Intellectual property is basically creativeness or hello everyone. I am Bhavna Singh working with Verispire Private Technologies Limited, and I'll be taking this session on plant variety rights. So let's start. Now we know what are intellectual properties. Intellectual property is basically creation or effort of human mind. When a person invents something using creativeness or intellect of his or her mind, it is called as intellectual property. These intellectual properties are protected by certain rights. These rights are granted to the inventor and called as intellectual property rights. Now, the intellectual property or the IP is further categorized into four major forms, that is, plant variety, industrial property, copyright, and traditional knowledge. Today, we'll be discussing about protection of plant varieties, especially in our country, in India. So, let's start. Now, before learning about plant variety protection, we all should know what are plant varieties. Now, the term species is a familiar unit. We all know that it is a botanical classification. Like, for example, if I say I have many different species of food, fruits. That would include mangoes, apples, bananas, oranges. All sorts of fruit would be included in species of fruits. But when I say I have different variety of a fruit, of a particular fruit, that means I have a different grouping, I have a different variety, or I have a different genre of that particular fruit. Let's say I have different varieties of mangoes, I have different varieties of apples. So, a variety is basically a grouping of plants, a grouping within a single botanical taxon. Now, these varieties, these plant varieties, are basically protected by certain rights called as plant variety rights. Now, we all know that farmers or breeders need plants with particular characteristics and the plants which are adapted to special qualities of the environment. So, these plant varieties are further protected for their own benefit. Now, the next question arises, why plant variety rights? Plant variety rights are also known as plant breeders' rights. They are basically granted to the breeder of a new plant variety. Now, these are internationally recognized form of intellectual property, which is used to protect unique plant varieties, which gives breeder or a farmer an exclusive control over the propagating material along with harvested material. This propagating material would include seed, would include leaves, would include fruits of that plant. Now, new plant varieties with improved yield, high quality, and better resistance to pests need tremendous amount of efforts in the field. But the development of breeding program of certain species will also remove the threat for their survival. Now, the process of plant breeding is quite long. It takes years and years for a farmer to develop a variety. However, if you are just reproducing that variety, it is quite quick and easy. Now, plant breeders and farmers spend years in developing a new plant variety that could make a substantial economic investment of the country. Thus, it is quite important for us to develop an effective system so that these new varieties can be protected. Now, what is the purpose? What is the purpose behind PVR or plant variety right? We all know that plants are considered as a form of intellectual property. So, the application of PVR system is similar to that of other intellectual property rights system. It gives protection and stimulates further innovation in plant breeding. When a person is rewarded for their efforts, they obviously get encouraged to do much better, to do more better. So it simulates further innovation. It allows plant breeders to collect royalty, to collect money on the production and sale of their seeds. It supports access to quality of proven high performing seeds. That means if a plant breeder has developed some sort of new variety, let's say a plant breeder has developed a new type of wheat which is enriched with vitamin A, which is enriched with minerals and nutrients, that plant breeder had given tremendous amount of time. So when that person will be selling their seeds, they'll gain royalty, and the other person, the buyer, will have an access of a high proven variety, high quality variety seeds. Now it also gives owner an exclusive right to commercially use it, sell it, and direct the production similar to other intellectual properties. Now, the next question arises, what sort of varieties are protected? What sort of varieties are given rights for the protection? Now, farmers and growers. Now, the next question arises, what are protected plant varieties? Or we can say that what varieties are protected? Now, farmers and breeders need plants with a particular characteristics and the plants which are adapted to nature, which are adapted to their own cultivation process. Now, these varieties, the varieties which are given protection, are further categorized into five forms. Now, what are protected plant varieties, or what sort of varieties, or what sort of plant varieties are given protection? Now, farmers and breeders need plants with specific type of characters. Now, these plants should be adopted to their cultivation processes and adopted to nature as well. Now, plant varieties are further categorized into five types. These are new varieties, extent varieties, farmers varieties, essentially derived varieties, and hybrid varieties. We'll be learning about these one by one. A new plant variety refers to previously known group of plants that are distinguished from other similar group of plants generation by generation. Now these are new plants which are not discovered in the wild, but they are a result, or they are a result of human efforts or human plant breeding. It has not been sold in market, or it has not been marketed for more than a year before the date of application. Such varieties are known as new plant varieties. For example, I could say a new type of vegetable, it could be new type of fruit, it could be new type of grain that could come into market. These are called as new varieties. The next is extant plant variety. Now, what are extant plant varieties? The varieties which are notified under Section 5 of Seed Act are called as extant plant varieties. Now, it could be a farmer variety, it could be a variety which people know about, it could be a variety which is already there in public domain. Now, extant varieties can be registered under this act it, if it confers the criteria of distinctiveness, uniformity, and stability. Now, the next is farmers plant variety. Now, farmers varieties are defined as varieties that are traditionally being cultivated and developed by farmers in their field, of varieties which are wild relative of any other variety which farmer has a common knowledge of. Let's say wheat, let's say rice, let's say millet or maize. These all varieties are cultivated by farmers in their field. So these are farmers varieties. Farmers already have a knowledge of them, and in case they cross them, or in case they genetically engineer them, or in case they breed them, these varieties would be a farmer variety. Now, the next is essentially derived varieties. Now, as the name suggests, these varieties are derived. These varieties are basically essentially derived from pre existing varieties. Now, what could be a mean of deriving these varieties? It could be via genetic engineering, it could be via mutation, it could be a tissue culture derivation. You can even backcross your varieties and call it an essentially derived variety. You could make a ploidy change. Example, for example, let's say say BT cotton. BT cotton was a variety of cotton only in which through genetic engineering a gene of a bacteria was inserted so that it could perform better in field, so that it could give a better pest resistance. So that was an essentially derived variety. Now, what are hybrid plant varieties? Let's say I have two parental lines. Let's say I have two parents, two set of parents. When I'll cross these parents, an F1 generation or a progeny or an offspring of plant will be what I'll be getting. So, the F1 generation, the resultant of crossing two different breeding lines, the originating cross or the first generation of that cross is called as a hybrid variety. Now, the clause with hybrid variety is that you cannot save the seeds of hybrid variety. You have to make cross of parental lines every single time you want to grow them. So they differ from pure line of variety. However, if we talk about performance in the field, they are at a par, they are at an unexpected level. They are unexpectedly performing well in the field. So these are called as hybrid plant varieties. For example, recently a dwarf coconut variety was developed. You can see it in image also.